you mentioned that movies have probably been the most affected. I mean, what movies have we not seen because of this? There's a pretty long list, I'm fairly certain.
So many. So this is airing on July 6th. So by July 6th, we should have been able to see Quiet Place Part 2, Mulan, Black Widow, Wonder Woman 1984, The Woman in the Window, Personal History of David Copperfield, The Green Knight, No Time to Die, Fast 9, Top Gun Maverick, as well as a bunch of other ones that I'm sure people have in mind as well. Free Guy, Ryan Reynolds. There's been a ton. And ridiculous, really. And Tenet, of course, was in a normal world only about to be, I think 2 weeks away at this point,
French Dispatch a couple weeks away.
That's right. French Dispatch was originally November. Oh, geez. Yeah, it's been nuts. And you see the impact it has on movies of all sizes, too. There's been a lot of movies that had their theatrical release plans completely canned, and they went to VOD, like King of Staten Island, or something like The Lovebirds, which Paramount canned theatrical release and just sold to Netflix. Just got it out the door, got rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
Kids movies too, stuff like Scoob, SpongeBob movie that's coming up. It's happened really for everything, and it's kind of, I think it's kind of driving home the shift we've been seeing, where it's becoming less and less viable for non-big budget IP films at the box office unless they're made on a very strict budget. And movies like traditional romantic comedies or normal comedies that just continue to not really do well at the box office, all these studios get to kind of test out what is the appetite for these movies if we just go straight to VOD. And if we've seen a lot of increases in price and staggering of prices, and I think a lot of data points are being learned right now, even if it's a captive audience. So I think we're going to see lasting effects too once people can go to the theaters again.
Man, just thinking about all these movies we've missed and how it's going to be impacted moving forward. Like Tenet recently being pushed back to August, even that seems skeptical to me. And I just want to know when we're going to be able to see these awesome films we're looking forward to, refer back to the films that we were most excited for in 2020 for a bit of a laugh, because I think we're only going to get maybe half of them, at this point.
Yeah, our Oscars pod is hilarious at this point. Obviously, the Oscars were pushed back, but we're talking about a lot of movies that some of them were pushed to 2021 anyway,
Mm-hmm.
It's just completely out of date discussion.
It's, and how fast that aged. It's crazy. And, even thinking about a movie like Tenet, Wonder Woman, you really need to feel secure after making an investment like that, that you're going to be able to get close to or make a profit off that. And I don't know when movie theaters are even going to be in a position where someone can say a traditional box office weekend can provide that. It's just the numbers are forever going to be an issue. So.
I will say one development that I am happy about, circumstances independent, of course, would be the rise of drive-in movie theaters once again. It seems to be a quite viable business for the drive-ins that are still open. And
yes.
If you go on Box Office Mojo or any of the other sites, you can look at the movies that have been making money at 100 something drive-ins we have in the US, and it's just kind of cool to see that business kind of come roaring back. And there's even been controversy around it too, where King of Staten Island wasn't actually at any drive-ins after drive-ins expecting to be able to show and stuff like that. So I mean, drive-ins are good, so that's cool with me.
Yeah, I dig drive-ins, but I also dig quite a few of the movies that have been released this year. So what are some of the movies, or why don't you start off by throwing out one or two movies that you've really enjoyed that are at the top of your list so far this year?
So right at the top of my list would be First Cow, which is a movie that A24 had just really started rolling out right when quarantine happened. So I know not a lot of people have really seen it at all outside of a few major cities, and A24 is keeping everything and will re-push all their movies in theaters when they can. That's why The Green Knight has not come on VOD, for example. So First Cow, everyone got to see that soon, but that's a movie that really blew me away. Kelly Reichardt film, and we have reviews for everything we're going to talk about, so you can always check those out for more in depth. I think First Cow is something just to keep back on your radar for when it's gonna inevitably be in theaters again.
Yeah, I guess I just find it hard to feel like when theaters open back up, I'm like First Cow, I'm gonna be looking for like Tenet or something big, but
Yeah, of course.
definitely on my
It'll
list
be
to
in the fall
watch.
sometime.
Top of my list, movie again we talked about twice on the pod. You did a solo review one time, then when I finally got around to it, when it dropped on Hulu, we talked about it. Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Um, just a absolutely crackling portrayal of uh, female love, towards each other. This romance, kind of in this period piece. That's
Mm-hmm.
a film I was not really prepared to like as much as I did, only because I really do not jive with period pieces. But this got me because it's just undeniable the chemistry
Mm-hmm.
between Naomi Merlant and Adele Haenel.
Yeah,
It's
Delano
amazing.
was really special in that movie. And Portrait, yeah, man, Portrait came out so long ago too. That came out on Hulu, I believe, on Valentine's
February.
Day ish time.
Yeah.
I was able to see in the theaters a little before that, but oh man, yeah, that's so funny because Portrait didn't get the quarantine like
Jump.
promo almost because it
Yeah.
came out on VOD or Hulu right before that, right?
Right.
That's funny. Um, yeah, that's an interesting movie, of course, because it was on last year's Oscar
Mhm.
uh, runs and stuff, and notably was not nominated for Best International Film due to the French picking Les Miserables instead for some reason. So it's kind of weird that, like, for all intents and purposes, it's a 2020 movie. The wide majority of people in the U.S. are seeing it this year, yet it was already kind of like submitted last year. So
Yep.
that happens sometimes. But yeah, that movie rules.
Yeah, it's on Hulu. Check it out. We're gonna be talking, I think, quite a bit about Hulu shows on Hulu in a second. So if you're not subscribed to Hulu, this might be a good time to do so. What else you got on your list?
Yeah, so I think this is probably one of those movies I first think of getting the VOD push would be Never Really, Sometimes Always,
Yep.
which is a really obviously small, lower profile film that is about a young woman going through great lengths to get an abortion and the emotional and physical trauma that entails. Another really, really well done movie that is tough not to have an emotional reaction to when you watch. And
Mhm.
I know that was put out by Focus. I'm not sure if it still costs 20 to rent. It might be less at this point. But that was actually one of the movies that got its feet really cut off by quarantine. It was just starting to begin a limited release. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great movie.
Yeah. Eliza Hittman directing that, and then Sydney Flanagan and Talia Ryder in their
Mm-hmm.
first real roles, just marvelous performances. Similarly, I guess a movie I kind of see in the same vein for the leads being in the same age range is Baby Teeth, a movie we talked about recently. The debut from Shannon Murphy, Eliza Scanlon, Ben Mendelsohn, Easy Davis, Toby Wallace. I mean, check out our review. It's we talked about it very recently, but man, I keep thinking back to some of the visuals in this, some of the
Mm-hmm.
moments. Mendelsohn, just in general, I think I said on the pod, probably my favorite Mendelsohn performance. And then I looked back and realized The Outsider also came out this year. I was like, oh, maybe
Right.
that's my favorite Mendelsohn performance. I feel like he's having a pretty good year, kind of breaking out of that role as always the bad guy.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I mean, not much else to say on Baby Teeth other than it's really a wonderful and enjoyable film, even though it's about a teenager dying.
Probably the best example of stark visuals you associate with new filmmakers and indie film and stuff.
Yeah, for
Definitely
sure.
worth the rent. And that's also at a normal price. So easy to watch.
What else you got, Dave?
Yeah. So similar vein, honestly, would be I think Tiger Tail on Netflix, Alan
Mm,
Yang's debut feature. Obviously, Alan Yang's a bit more well known due to his work with Aziz Ansari and Forever and Parks and all that. But
yep.
I think Tiger Tail, it's definitely a movie that you can see the influences and the homage it's paying, but that doesn't, at least to me, take away from I think the emotional effects it has and the attention to detail. I also really appreciate about it. It's a uh, I think quite a moving story about Asian life.
Yeah, no, I agree. Tiger Tail's fantastic. What I think is funny about the three movies you just mentioned in a row, they're pretty heavy, in different ways. Like they're all about grief and loss and sacrifice, and um I think it's really interesting that that's been a bit of a theme in a year when uh it seems like the world is dealing with that in a sense. So um all three of those movies are great. Another movie that I think is a little more hopeful and triumphant is Crip Camp, the documentary dropped on Netflix this year, talking about um, the disability revolution and
Mhm.
kind of the fight that these activists and young people back in the 70s had fighting for the rights of disabled people. And um, really just a well-made documentary. I believe it won Academy Award. I think, if I'm remembering correctly. Is
No,
that
wasn't
uh,
nominated. That's for this upcoming year,
okay?
but I think it won
So
something at Sundance.
yeah, that's what it was. So it's something at Sundance. Produced by Obama's production company. Just a really, I think, uplifting story. And also, I think a good reminder as we are in a political and cultural point where I think people are more aware of the lack of equality and equity in for all people in our communities. That the fight doesn't really end. That it's ongoing and progress is good, but
Hmm.
there's always more to be done. So I find it to be a very encapsulating film for this year. What else is on your list?
Yeah. So I think Shirley on Hulu, starring Elizabeth Moss. Uh, Obviously, a bit of a biopic, but also has that kind of indie flourish in terms of visuals and the way it communicates uh, action and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's probably not everyone's cup of tea, just the way the story it tells. But again, kind of similar to Baby Teeth in terms of you're going to kind of get like more like capital F filmmaker stuff going on if you watch
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, that portrayal of Shirley Jackson is just very trippy, and Elizabeth Moss is electric on screen. We also talked about King of Staten Island recently, Judd
Mm-hmm.
Apatow's new film with Pete Davidson, who also had another film, Big Time Adolescence, where I think we were impressed with his turn, and I think it just solidifies that Pete is meant to be, on the big screen. The bit roles and the variety show format maybe isn't really where he thrives, and him and Bill Burr are just great in this. It's Apatow in a lot of ways, maybe a little long, could have been condensed, a couple of moments that maybe could have been cut out or didn't make sense, but overall, really enjoyable film, really funny. And again, you get Burr and Pete Davidson, one of the most solidified comedians in the game
Right.
and one of the best up and coming ones really on their A game. So worth the watch, worth the $20.
Yeah, definitely. Also, just two other smaller films that came out before quarantine. The Assistant, which came out what, January, February, I forget now, which stars Julia Garner. It's a Me Too film that is told in a really compelling way because um, it's not actually about exposing someone. It's about the terror that working under a menace like that has
Yep.
on everyone, and really great, honestly. And then Emma, you know, Jane Austen, not
Mm-hmm.
nothing new there, but Anya Taylor Joy is pretty good, I guess. And On to Wild, another like kind of rising filmmaker, has that flourish and stuff. So if period pieces, not exactly Pat's cup of tea, but the costume drama stuff, this is pretty good for that. So Emma, you can rent that one as well.
And then I think we have to mention the one behind you, Dave,
Of
Defy
course.
Bloods from Spike Lee, his newest joint. Um, yeah, Delroy Lindo showing out.
It's our longest review this year. A lot to say on it. There's a lot of themes, great performances, a lot of Spike going on. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, I feel like I'm still processing it. It's one of those movies that you really end up just kind of chewing on for a while. So
Mm-hmm.
check it out. It's on Netflix. Everybody's got Netflix. Go watch it. Dave, one movie that you thought was worse than you expected, most disappointing, or that you just really want to like bag on real quick.
Uh, So Artemis Fowl is abjectly terrible in ways that honestly defy comprehension. I actually did read most of those books as a kid, and it's kind of unrecognizable what happened to that. What, like 9% on Rotten Tomatoes? Like, you gotta try to get that much consensus in the negative. um,
Man.
yeah, I mean, that one's easy to rag on. A lot of people kind of saw this coming and stuff, and
Mhm.
maybe we'll feel this way about New Mutants if it does in fact come out in a few
Oh
months.
God.
TBD. Also, I was on a more serious note. I was quite disappointed in the last thing he wanted. You know,
Hmm.
it had all the trappings of a cast and filmmaker that I liked. Yet it's really quite a mess of a film. Lost
Yeah.
Network, same way.
It's funny because I almost feel bad bringing this one up. Check out our review of Capone.
Mm.
Man, I mean, with Josh Trank and the production issues that kind of came with this as well, kind of being pushed back and all these different parts, it was already probably going to be bad. But to get what we got, uh, I mean, talk about a shit show, literally in some ways. And yeah, Tom Hardy, man, like I don't know, just a very strange portrayal, like and intelligible at points. Like that's the thing, you just don't even know what they're saying half the time. Bad,
Yeah, I mean,
not
Tom
good.
Hardy as Capone sounds good on paper if it's like Capone in his prime, not Capone losing his mind.
Yeah,
It's But in a sense,
tough.
it's kind of the perfect Tom Hardy role. He loves this shit,
Yep.
so get the money, I guess.